The Mystara project is proud to present part 27 of the Lore of Mystara series. In this video, we cover the period from BC 249 to BC 100. Sometime before BC 200, Sarskas hatched among the devilfish of the sea floor near Oceania. Sarskas rose up the ranks of the clergy, and was infected with vampirism as part of the ceremony to make her a matriarch. She then sacrificed thousands of tritons on altars on the sea floor. This completed her path of the fiend in the sphere of entropy, possibly sponsored by Demogorgon, ruler of all fiends. She achieved immortality as Sarskas the Destroyer, a hissing fiend, patron of devilfish and the destruction of aquatic civilization. By BC 200, Sarskas had departed the sea floor to wander the plains. Taking advantage of her departure, the Tritons fled from the devilfish to the north, into the sunlit sea, from a southern sea. This was perhaps the western Belisarian Sea near the Pearl Islands. After a few skirmishes with the nomadic Mero, they established the kingdom of Tiluareva on the sea floor between Utter Isle and Traders Isle. By BC 200, Mylenian culture had become distinguishable from their Tralda origins. Their skin color had become olive from intermarriage with Oltec-descended tribes. Mylenian was now a distinct language from Tralda. They had entered the Iron Age, adopting modern weapons and armor. By BC 200, 17 Orcish tribes controlled the northwestern Streel Plain, west of the Streel River as far south as Arco Rose, the Broken Lands, the Southern Highlands, most of the Ethengarian Steppes, and the Orklands. Perhaps Red Orcs dominated the western Streel Plain region, Common Orcs the Highlands, Tanguts and Slickter Yellow Orcs the Steppes, and Yellow Orcs in the Orklands. The tribes ferociously conflicted with each other frequently, preventing coordinated attacks against their neighbors. They mostly steered clear of the deadly elven warriors of Alfheim. Human clans, probably mainly descended from the Tralda, inhabited the southern and eastern Streel Plain in small villages. The clans occasionally fought one another, but for the most part, raised good crops on the excellent farmland of the plain. The most organized clan was the East Winders, who occupied the territory between the Streel River and the Canalbath Forest. Their seat was the village of Favaro, on the east bank of the Streel River in the center of the plains region. The elves of Alfheim aided them with magic, weapons, and skills, so they could act as an effective buffer state between the orcs and the elves. At the start of the 9th century after landfall, the Alphatian emperor was Kerathar IV. This means 200 BC, according to Dawn of the Emperor's Book 3, on page 6, however it was possibly meant to read, at the start of the 10th century after landfall, which would have been BC 100. He was magically clever, but sickly from family inbreeding, lazy, and unintelligent in government matters. This set a bad example that spread to his imperial subjects. Zonga was once again taking a toll on Alphatian civilization by this stage. Around BC 200, Alphatia invaded the western peninsula of the lands of Gen, an area thinly populated by Neolithic technological level tribes. They drove the Genites back several hundred miles, enslaving some as well. The Alphatians called their new lands Esterhold. The Genites began retaliating with sporadic raids. Between BC 200 and AC 200, the human clans of the Streel Plain slowly drove the Orcs back, expanding their farmlands. The Eastwind clan traded surplus elven weapons and magic in return for the allegiance of other clans. After BC 200, the corrupt Mylenian emperor, Chronosus III, had rigged votes and appointed senators, to ensure the election of his son to the throne. He also severely oppressed settlements on the fringes of the empire. Corruption became ingrained. This began the decline of Mylenian power, as the ruling class became decadent and interested only in self-gratification. The military grew soft, increasingly relying on enslaved tribesmen, and primitive tribes were able to sack Mylenian communities and return to their former homelands. In BC 192, Alphatia discovered that the Altan Tepe mountains north of Thyatis were rich with gold. The Thyacians mined very little gold, as they preferred to obtain it through stealing from trade missions and piracy. The Alphatians set out to conquer the Thyacians for slave labor, mineral wealth, and to stop their piratical activities. After encountering stiff resistance from the Thyacian navy, and suffering the loss of a few wizards, the Alphatians brought their full magical resources to bear, and conquered the cities of Thyatis, Kurenders, and Hattirs. By BC 190, Alphatia defeated the last pocket of Thyacian resistance, conquering the Thyacian tribes and adding their territory to the Alphatian Empire. The Alphatians began to civilize the Thyacians, introducing writing, arts, music, magic, and Colosseum entertainment. In return, Alphatia learnt seafaring skills, took Thyacian ships, mined gold from the Altan Tepes, and took Thyacian herd beasts and crops. Trade between Alphatia and Thyatis commenced. Sometime between BC 170 and BC 130, Titaneon was born in the Mylenian Empire. By BC 151, the gnomes working on the Flying City project of the central Altan Tepe Mountains had erected immense scaffolding and other instruments in a valley that they protected with illusions and traps. Not too long after BC 151, the valley was found by a human sage. The sage offered information about Blackmoor, magical skills which could aid the gnomes, and a source of dexterous and intelligent help. The gnomes reacted favorably, so Wretchfoot the Norgpar dropped his polymorph disguise. Though uncertain, the gnomes allowed Wretchfoot a trial period. His help proved most useful, and soon a small group of refugee Norgpar and Tabby arrived to help out. In BC 150, disguised shadow elf spies first contacted humanoids in the Broken Lands, fueling their hatred of the Alfheim elves. The humanoids unsuccessfully attacked Alfheim. Also around BC 150, Tortles of the Savage Coast built the settlement of Zul, west of the Nidegard Mountains, and began trading with local dwarfs, elves, and humans. In BC 102, some Mylenians fled the collapse of their empire by boarding ships and sailing northeast on the Belisarian Sea. By BC 100, Mylenian civilization had grown soft and decadent, enslaving neighboring tribes and relying on non-Mylenian conscripted troops. The empire was under nearly constant attack by neighboring tribes. Dissident and incompetent leaders were in charge of most military and government functions. The Mylenians appealed to the Immortals for help, but none came. Competent and uncorrupted Mylenians, like Titaneon, suddenly vanished, further weakening the empire. Those that vanished were transported by the Immortals Halav and Petra to the Hollow World, as the Immortals were angry at most of the Mylenians, who had ignored their guidance for centuries. After almost 2 years traveling about 5,000 miles, Mylenian refugees reached the southwestern coast of Scotha. They negotiated with the local Genites to settle a tract of coastal wilderness between two prosperous Genite cities. There they founded the settlement of Mina-er and began trading with the Genites. In BC 100, the Tralda of the Lost Valley of Hutaka freed themselves from Hutakan rule and began to war against the Hutakans. Also in BC 100, the Thyacian resistance commenced digging catacombs underneath Thyatis city to bury their dead, and as a secret meeting place to plot against their Alphatian overlords. Sometime between BC 100 and BC 50, Thracians migrated north to the jungle coast, overrunning the collapsing Mylenian Empire and assimilating the remnants of the Thyacian tribes. Sometime between BC 100 and BC 1, the Great Chthonian Temple of Remembrance burnt to the ground, destroying the last known Chthonian coin in existence. Prior to AC 0, the Inn Between the Worlds was discovered by Eastwinders in the southern Broken Lands. Rumors were started about the mysterious inn. Like the legend that it houses a band of heroes sworn to save an empire, if only they can find their way out of the inn. Or that it is a place of exile for an evil lord, whose people drove him from their own dimension, so that he wouldn't cause them further trouble after they had deposed him. Or that it is a hostel for a brotherhood of adventurers, who travel between worlds in search of wealth and excitement. Also prior to AC 0, Clan Dorneril settled in the Emilas region of the northern Canolbarth forest. Sometime between BC 100 and AC 999, Taroyas was born into lands dominated by Mylenian culture. He became a cleric of Coronis. Eventually, he embarked on the path of the dynast in the sphere of time, sponsored by Coronis. He created a realm of at least 50,000 inhabitants and built a great new capital, either ruling himself or via a nominee, for at least 20 years. He found a time travel artifact to protect the dynasty he founded. Taroyas attained immortality as a patron of kingship, and gained followers among the Mylenians. This concludes part 27 of the Lore of Mystara series. a period of catastrophic decline for the Mylenian Empire, and one of continued cultural decline for the still expanding Alphatian Empire.